Skyrim is full of places with clear histories, ancient ruins, cities, caves. You usually learn who built them, what happened there, and why they matter. But some locations feel different. Some places in Skyrim seem to resist explanation entirely. They leave behind strange details, unanswered questions, and bits of lore that never fully connect no matter how closely you look at them. You explore them, read every journal, search every corner, and still walk away feeling like there's something missing. That's what makes these places so memorable, not just because they're hidden or unsettling, but because Skyrim never gives you a complete answer about them. Instead, the game leaves you with theories, implications, and the feeling that something bigger might be hiding beneath the surface. And honestly, those are often the locations players remember the longest. The Temple of Miraak is one of the most mysterious places in Skyrim, because from the moment you first see it, the location feels like it exists outside the normal logic of the world around it. Most ruins in Skyrim eventually reveal what they are. You learn who built them, why they collapsed, what happened inside them, and how they fit into the larger history of Tamriel. Even the strangest Nordic ruins usually become understandable once you dig through enough journals, Draga crypts, or quest dialogue. The Temple of Miraak never fully does. Even after completing the entire Dragonborn DLC, there's still a lingering feeling that you never truly understood what the place was or what it became over time. That mystery starts before you even enter the temple itself. The surrounding region of Solstheim already feels detached from Skyrim, covered in ash, ancient ruins, and strange influences tied directly to Hermaeus Mora. But the temple stands apart even within that environment, massive, ancient, and partially buried beneath the surface. It dominates the landscape in a way that immediately raises questions. Unlike many Nordic ruins that simply feel abandoned, the Temple of Miraak feels active somehow, not alive exactly, but waiting. And the people surrounding it only deepen that feeling. The first time players encounter the temple, the Skarl villagers and other inhabitants of Solstheim are being mysteriously controlled while constructing strange shrines around the Allmaker stones. They move in repetitive trances, endlessly working without understanding why, drawn towards Miraak's influence as though their minds no longer belong to them. That alone makes the temple feel unnatural before you even step inside, because Miraak's power reaches outward from the temple into the minds of people across the island itself. And nobody fully understands how. That lack of explanation defines the entire location. The deeper you go into the temple, the more the atmosphere shifts away from the ordinary Skyrim dungeon design and into something far stranger. The architecture still resembles Nordic ruins on the surface, stone corridors, ancient carvings, Draga crypts, but there's another layer beneath it constantly pushing through. Tentacles, eyes, black organic growths tied to Hermaeus Mora. The temple feels corrupted in a way unlike almost any other ruin in Skyrim. Not destroyed, but transformed. And that transformation creates one of the biggest mysteries surrounding the location. Where exactly does Miraak end and Hermaeus Mora begin? Because the temple doesn't feel fully Nordic anymore. It feels like something ancient was slowly rewritten by an entirely different force over time. You can still see traces of what the structure originally was, but they're buried beneath layers of influence connected to Apocrypha and forbidden knowledge. That blending of identities makes the temple feel unstable, like it no longer fully belongs to Skyrim at all. And Miraak himself only intensifies that feeling. As the first Dragonborn, Miraak already occupies a strange place in Elder Scrolls lore. He predates nearly everything players associate with dragons and the Dragonborn prophecy, existing as a figure half hidden between myth and history. The temple reflects that same ambiguity perfectly. It's ancient but not fully understood, powerful but strangely incomplete. Even the Draga inside the temple feel different from those in ordinary Nordic tombs. Most Draga crypts in Skyrim are tied to ancient kings, dragon priests, or burial traditions. The Draga within Mirak's temple feel more like servants preserving something unfinished. Their presence doesn't just suggest death, it suggests continued devotion long after normal history should have erased it. And then there are the Black Books. Few things in Skyrim create mystery as effectively as the Black Books connected to Hermaeus Mora. Their existence immediately disrupts the normal boundaries of reality within the game. Reading one doesn't simply reveal information, it physically pulls the player into Apocrypha, a realm that operates entirely outside of normal understanding. The Temple of Mirak becomes one of the central gateways to that experience. And once Apocrypha enters the picture, the mystery surrounding the temple expands dramatically. Because suddenly the location stops feeling like a ruin and starts feeling like a bridge between worlds. That's what makes the temple so unsettling compared to other mysterious places in Skyrim. Most mysteries in the game remain grounded in history or archaeology. The Temple of Mirak moves beyond that into metaphysical territory. It raises questions that don't have concrete answers, because they involve forces far beyond mortal understanding. How much of Mirak's power actually came from being Dragonborn? How much came from Hermaeus Mora? Did Mirak willingly transform the temple over time, or did the corruption happen naturally through Mora's influence? And perhaps most importantly, how long had the temple been waiting for the player before they ever arrived? That last question becomes increasingly disturbing throughout the DLC. The temple constantly feels prepared for your arrival somehow. Mirak knows about you long before you fully understand him. The cultists know your name. The Black Books react to your presence. It creates the impression that events surrounding the temple were unfolding quietly long before the player became aware of them. Like the entire place existed in a dormant state, waiting for another Dragonborn to appear. And that sense of inevitability gives the temple an almost prophetic atmosphere. Everything inside it feels predetermined. Even the structure itself contributes to this mystery constantly. Unlike straightforward ruins with clear layouts and purpose, the Temple of Mirak feels layered in confusing ways. Ancient chambers blend into impossible spaces connected to Apocrypha. Hidden passages reveal buried sections beneath the visible ruins. The further you descend, the less stable the architecture starts to feel conceptually. It's as though the temple physically reflects the corruption of knowledge itself, a place where reality slowly loses coherence the deeper you go. That effect becomes strongest whenever Hermaeus Mora's influence visibly overtakes the environment. The tentacles, black waters, and shifting textures associated with this place don't behave like natural corruption. They feel invasive in a cosmic sense, as though another realm is bleeding directly into the physical world. And the terrifying part is that nobody inside the temple fully controls it anymore. Not the Draga, not the cultists, possibly not even Mirak himself. That uncertainty surrounding control is another reason the temple feels so mysterious. Mirak presents himself as powerful and independent, but throughout the DLC, there are constant hints that he may simply be another prisoner of Hermaeus Mora in the end. The temple reflects that ambiguity perfectly. Is it Mirak's domain or Mora's? The answer never fully becomes clear, and Skyrim intentionally leaves that uncertainty unresolved. Even after defeating Mirak, the temple doesn't suddenly become understandable. If anything, it becomes stranger in retrospect. You leave with more questions than answers about what exactly happened there across thousands of years. The location never fully explains its transformation from Nordic temple to cosmic nightmare. It simply presents the evidence and leaves players to interpret it themselves. That ambiguity is what gives the temple its lasting impact, because mystery in Skyrim works best when the game refuses to over-explain itself, and the Temple of Mirak thrives on incomplete understanding. You can explore every chamber, read every black book, and finish every quest tied to it. Yet the place still feels unknowable by the end. Compared to other mysterious locations in Skyrim, which usually hide secrets beneath physical ruins or lost histories, the Temple of Miraak feels mysterious because it challenges the limits of what players can even comprehend within the world. It isn't just ancient, it's altered by something beyond ordinary reality. And that makes every part of it feel uncertain. The architecture, the lore, the magic. Even the timeline itself surrounding Miraak and Hermaeus Mora. Nothing inside the temple ever feels fully grounded. And that's exactly why it remains one of the most fascinating locations in Skyrim, years after release. Because no matter how many times players revisit it, there's always the lingering sense that something about the temple still hasn't been fully uncovered. Something buried beneath the ruins, the black books, and the whispers of Apocrypha. Waiting quietly beneath Solstheim, long before the player arrived and possibly long after they leave. White Ridge Barrow is one of the most mysterious places in Skyrim and Solstheim because it constantly feels like multiple layers of history have collapsed into each other in ways the game never fully explains. At first glance, it appears to be another Nordic ruin buried beneath the ash and snow of the island. The kind of ancient tomb players have explored countless times across Skyrim. But the deeper you move into White Ridge Barrow, the stranger the location becomes. Dragger crypts give way to hidden laboratories. Nordal burial halls connect to bizarre magical experiments. And eventually the entire ruin begins feeling less like a tomb and more like something unstable. Like several completely different stories were forced together underground over centuries. And that instability is exactly what makes the place so mysterious. Because unlike many other ruins in Skyrim that eventually reveal a clear purpose, White Ridge Barrow never fully settles into one identity. It's a Nordic crypt, a necromantic hideout, an ash spawn breeding ground, a hidden black book location tied to Hermaeus Mora, and somehow all of those things exist together beneath the same structure. That layering immediately creates questions the game never fully answers. The ruin itself predates almost everything currently happening there. Originally, White Ridge Barrow was simply another Nordic burial site, part of Solstheim's ancient connection to Skyrim's dragon cults and early Nordic civilization. You see the familiar architecture immediately: stone corridors, burial chambers, dragger resting in alcoves, traps built to protect ancient dead. But then strange details start appearing. The ash, the unnatural heat buried beneath the cold environment, the experiments hidden deeper within the ruin, and suddenly the place stops feeling historically stable. That shift becomes especially noticeable once you discover the hidden laboratory of Dukin's former servant and necromancer. Her presence completely changes the tone of the barrow because it introduces an entirely different layer of mystery on top of the Nordic ruins already beneath it. She wasn't simply hiding in White Ridge Barrow, she was actively experimenting there, using the ruin and the volcanic energy beneath Solstheim to create ash spawn. And the ash spawn themselves are one of the most mysterious enemy types in the entire Dragonborn DLC. They don't feel natural, not fully alive, not fully undead. Creatures made from ash, fire, and corrupted magical force, animated through experiments the player never fully understands. White Ridge Barrow becomes the central location where these horrifying creatures begin to make sense, but only partially. Even after reading journals and exploring the laboratory, there's still an incomplete quality to the explanation surrounding them. You understand what Ildari was doing, but not necessarily the full extent of how or why it worked. That incomplete understanding is what makes the location feel so dangerous, because White Ridge Barrow constantly suggests there are forces operating beneath Solstheim that nobody fully comprehends anymore. Not the player, not the necromancers, possibly not even Hermaeus Mora himself. And that uncertainty hangs over the entire ruin. The environmental design reinforces this perfectly. Unlike many Nordic crypts, which maintain a constant atmosphere throughout, White Ridge Barrow constantly changes tone as you descend. The upper sections feel familiar and relatively predictable: dragger, traps, burial halls. But deeper inside, the architecture starts blending with volcanic heat and strange magical corruption. The air itself feels heavy. Fire erupts from vents beneath the stone floors. Ash coats sections of the ruin that should feel cold and dead. It's as though Solseam itself is bleeding upward into the crypt. And that environmental instability creates a sense that the ruin was never meant to contain everything now buried inside it. The danger surrounding the location only intensifies because of how unpredictable the threats become. Most Skyrim dungeons operate within understandable rules. Falmer caves contain Falmer. Vampire lairs contain vampires. Dragger crypts contain only Dragger, for the most part. White Ridge Barrow contains everything. Dragger attack alongside Ash spawn. Fire traps erupt unexpectedly from volcanic vents. Necromantic experiments linger in hidden chambers beneath ancient Nordic architecture. The location constantly shifts between different forms of danger, making it feel unstable both mechanically and narratively. And then there's the Black Book. The moment the player discovers the hidden twilight hidden within White Ridge Barrow, the ruin transforms completely from dangerous to deeply mysterious. Because suddenly, the location becomes directly tied to Hermaeus Mora and Apocrypha, connecting it to cosmic forces far beyond ordinary Nordic history or necromancy. That changes everything retroactively. The experiments, the ash spawn, the corruption within the ruin, all of it suddenly feels connected to something larger and far more unknowable. And the terrifying part is that the game never fully clarifies how deep that connection actually goes. Was Ildari influenced directly by Hermaeus Mora? Did the Black Book corrupt the ruin over time? Or was White Ridge Barrow already unstable before Mora's influence ever arrived? The game leaves those questions deliberately unresolved. That ambiguity is what gives the ruin its lasting impact. White Ridge Barrow constantly feels like a location where too many dangerous things converged in the same place over centuries. Nordic burial traditions, volcanic energy, necromantic experimentation, Daedric knowledge, all layered together underground until the ruin itself started feeling corrupted by accumulation alone. Compared to other mysterious places in Skyrim, White Ridge Barrow stands out because the danger feels intellectual as much as physical. You aren't just fighting enemies, you're uncovering evidence of people pushing into forces they didn't fully understand. Every hidden chamber and laboratory reinforces the idea that curiosity and ambition slowly transformed the ruin into something much worse than its creators ever intended. Ildari herself embodies this perfectly. She's one of Skyrim's clearest examples of magical obsession escalating into complete moral collapse. Her experiments with ash spawn feel grotesque because they blur the line between creation and corruption. She wasn't simply studying ash creatures, she was manufacturing them, creating life from destruction itself. And White Ridge Barrow becomes the environment where that obsession spiraled completely out of control. Even visually, White Ridge Barrow feels corrupted compared to ordinary Nordic ruins. The volcanic glow beneath sections of the crypt creates an oppressive heat that clashes unnaturally with the cold northern atmosphere of the island. Fire and ash replace the usual icy silence associated with Nordic tombs. The environment feels active in a way ancient ruins normally don't. Like something beneath the surface is shifting, still burning, still unfinished. That unfinished feeling is another huge part of the mystery surrounding the location. White Ridge Barrow doesn't feel like a completed story. It feels like layers of failed ambitions left buried underground over generations. Ancient Nords built the crypt, necromancers invaded it. Hermaeus Mora's influence seeped into it, ash spawn emerged from it. And none of those forces ever fully erased the others. They simply just accumulated. That accumulation makes the ruin feel almost cursed by history itself. Every era leaving behind another dangerous secret beneath the last. And by the time the player finally leaves White Ridge Barrow, there's still a lingering sense that the location never revealed everything hidden inside it. The Black Book remains tied to Apocrypha. The Ash Spawn still exists. The deeper origins of the ruin remain unclear. Even after clearing the dungeon mechanically, the place still feels unresolved conceptually, like there are still unanswered questions buried somewhere beneath the ash and stone. That's what ultimately makes White Ridge Barrow one of the most mysterious and dangerous places in Skyrim. Not just the enemies, not just the hidden experiments, but the feeling that the ruin itself became unstable after centuries of forbidden knowledge, ancient death and unnatural power colliding underground. A place where history, magic and corruption layered over each other until nobody, not even the player, could eventually fully separate where one horror ended and the next began. High Hrothgar is one of the most recognisable locations in Skyrim, but at the same time it's also one of the most concealed. Not hidden in a traditional sense, everyone knows it exists, but hidden through distance, isolation and the sheer effort required to reach it. It sits at the top of the throne of the world, separated from the rest of Skyrim not by walls or secrecy, but by scale. The mountain itself acts as a barrier, making the monastery feel removed from normal life long before you ever arrive there. And that separation is what gives High Hrothgar its hidden quality. It's not a place you casually pass through, you have to commit to reaching it. That journey is a huge part of what makes the location feel concealed. The 7,000 steps aren't just a path, they're a process. As you climb higher, the rest of Skyrim begins to fall away behind you. Settlements disappear in the distance, the environment becomes harsher, and the world starts to feel quieter. There's a gradual sense of disconnection that builds with every step upward. By the time you're halfway there, it already feels like you've left the normal world behind, and the game reinforces that feeling constantly. The weather shifts, the air grows colder, the soundscape changes from movement and activity to wind and silence. Even the encounters along the way contribute to this separation. Frost trolls, wolves, and the occasional dragon don't just serve as enemies. They reinforce the idea that this path is difficult to reach on purpose. High Hrothgar isn't hidden behind a secret entrance or illusionary wall. It's hidden behind endurance. You have to earn access to it. That alone makes it feel different from most locations in Skyrim. Cities are designed to draw you in. Ruins are scattered naturally across the landscape. But High Hrothgar feels deliberately removed, positioned in a way that keeps it detached from everything below. And because of that, arriving there feels less like discovering a building and more like reaching a threshold. The monastery itself amplifies this feeling immediately. The architecture is simple, ancient, and restrained, lacking the grandeur you might expect from a place so important. There are no large banners, no signs of wealth or power, nothing designed to impress outsiders. Instead, everything feels stripped down to purpose. Stone walls, sparse interiors, quiet halls. It doesn't feel like a place built to be seen. It feels like a place built to be left alone. That quietness becomes one of the defining aspects of High Hrothgar. Unlike nearly every other major location in Skyrim, there's very little movement or activity. The Greybeards rarely speak, and when they do, every word feels deliberate. Conversations aren't casual. They're measured, restrained, almost ceremonial. That creates an atmosphere unlike anywhere else in the game, because silence becomes part of the location itself. And in a game filled with noise, combat, politics, movement, constant interaction, that silence feels unnatural at first. The monastery doesn't encourage exploration in the usual sense. There aren't distractions pulling your attention in different directions. Instead, it forces you to slow down, to focus on the environment and the people within it. That restraint is what makes High Hrothgar feel so concealed. It isn't trying to engage with the outside world. In fact, the Greybeards actively separate themselves from it. They live above Skyrim both physically and symbolically. detached from politics, conflict, and everyday life. Even though they possess immense power through the voice, they choose isolation over influence. And that choice is important, because it means High Hrothgar isn't hidden due to weakness or obscurity. It's hidden through intention. The Greybeards want separation. They literally maintain it. Everything about the location reinforces that philosophy. The climb discourages casual visitors. The environment discourages comfort. The people discourage unnecessary interaction. There's a sense that the monastery exists outside the normal flow of the world, preserved in a state that hasn't changed much over time. And that preservation creates a strange contrast with the rest of Skyrim. Below the mountain, the province is chaotic. Civil war divides the holds, dragons return to the skies, political tensions constantly shift. But High Hrothgar remains still, removed, untouched in a way that almost feels impossible, given everything happening around it. That stillness can feel comforting at first, but the longer you think about it, the stranger it becomes. Because High Hrothgar isn't disconnected due to distance alone, it's also disconnected by design. The Greybeards know what's happening in Skyrim. They understand the significance of events unfolding below them, and yet they remain apart from it all, choosing contemplation over intervention. That decision creates a subtle tension around the location. This is a place filled with knowledge and power, but also restraint to an extreme degree. And that restraint makes the monastery feel even more isolated. Not abandoned, not forgotten, just intentionally unreachable in every sense, except the physical one. Even the lore surrounding High Hrothgar reinforces its hidden nature. It's one of the oldest and most sacred places in Skyrim, deeply tied to the history of the Voice, the Dragonborn, and the worship of Kine. But despite that significance, it remains inaccessible to most people. The Greybeards rarely interact with the outside world, and ordinary citizens speak of them almost like myths rather than active figures. That creates an interesting contradiction. High Hrothgar is famous, but it is also unknowable. People know of it without truly understanding it. And that distinction is what keeps it feeling concealed despite its importance. The monastery also benefits from how the game introduces it. You don't reach it immediately. The story builds toward it gradually, treating the location as something distant and significant long before you ever see it. By the time you finally make the climb after killing your first dragon, the anticipation itself contributes to the feeling that you're entering somewhere separate from the rest of the world. And when you arrive, the game doesn't overwhelm you with spectacle. It pulls you inward instead. The halls are quiet, the rooms are basically sparse, the atmosphere is controlled. Everything about the place feels focused on removal from distraction, from conflict, from ordinary life. That minimalism is what makes it memorable, because in a world as dense and active as Skyrim, High Hrothgar achieves something very few locations do. It creates absence of noise, absence of urgency, absence of connection to the world below. And that absence ultimately becomes its identity. Compared to other hidden places in Skyrim, which are often concealed through physical barriers or obscurity, High Hrothgar feels hidden philosophically. It isn't buried underground or tucked behind secret passages. It's visible from a distance. The mountain literally dominates the landscape. But visibility doesn't equal accessibility, and accessibility doesn't always equal understanding. That's why the location works so well within the theme of hidden places. Because despite being one of the most important sites in the game, it still feels separated from normal experience in a way very few other places do. You don't just find High Hrothgar, you leave the rest of Skyrim behind to reach it. And once you're there, the separation becomes so complete that the world below starts to feel distant, almost unreal compared to the stillness above. That's what makes High Hrothgar feel truly concealed, not because no one knows it exists, but because so few people ever truly reach it, understand it, or belong there. It's hidden not by secrecy, but by isolation, intention, and silence. Some places in Skyrim call attention to themselves. Ruins scream, peaks crackle with dragonfire, shrines gleam with divine light. And then there's Lake Illinalta. It doesn't scream, it doesn't even speak. It just sits. A stretch of water so vast it breaks the horizon. Quiet, peaceful, beautiful, even trees lean gently at its edge. Birds circle overhead, reflections ripple in the shadows. But under the surface, it remembers. Because Illinalta isn't just a lake, it's a grave. And the things that sunk here didn't just drown, they were buried on purpose. Which could make this the most mysterious lake in all of Skyrim. There are many ruins across Skyrim. Few are as haunting as Illinalta's Deep. Near the lake's western edge, what looks like a rocky outcrop reveals itself to be the entrance to a temple half swallowed by water. Inside lies the wreckage of what was once a proud fortress of the College of Whispers, long since overrun. The current occupants, a necromancer, the former teacher who brought ruin not only to his students, but to the very walls of the temple itself. Obsessed with defeating death, he used the temple to conduct horrifying experiments with black soul gems and Azura's star. But the location of Illinalta's Deep raises more questions than answers. Why did the temple sink? Did the necromancer cause the collapse, or was he simply squatting in the ruins of something darker? Some believe the lake claimed the temple because of the rituals held within it. Others say the waters were drawn to the power of the star, pulled down by the weight of the souls trapped inside. But the truth is simpler and worse. Simply, no one cared, so the lake took it. Across from the ruin, near the northeastern part of the lake, lies a standing stone, the Lady Stone, resting quietly on its own tiny little island. It promises regeneration, healing, and rebirth. But it also sits alone, far from the roads and unguarded. Players rarely visit it more than once. In a game filled with guiding forces, the warrior, the mage, the thief, the lady stands apart, passive, isolated, ignored. But why? Some say it's simply underpowered, a gameplay design decision, which could be true. But in Skyrim, isolation is usually intentional. Perhaps the lady was once worshipped before the temple sank. Perhaps she watches over the drowned, or perhaps she's the reason nothing ever comes back from the bottom of the lake. She doesn't protect, she preserves. Scattered along Lake Illinalta's banks and shallows are a dozen sunken rowboats. Most are broken in half, some have skeletons slumped inside. One has a journal telling of a husband's ill-fated fishing trip. There was no major naval battles near Lake Illinalta, no official histories of floods or disasters. And yet, the boats continue to accumulate. One theory, Illinalta acts as a magical sinkhole, quietly pulling things in. Another suggests that the lake was cursed by the necromancer in Illinalta's Deep, creating a magical pull that drowns anyone who stays too long. But maybe the scariest answer is there's no curse. People just stopped rowing, and the lake doesn't ask why. Falkreath Hold and Riverwood sit close to Lake Illinalta. You'd expect there to be fishermen, trade, boats docked on its shores. But there are almost none. No harbours, no fisheries, no daily traffic across the waters. A few NPCs mention the lake in passing, but none really rely on it. And that silence? It's louder than any scream. Even Hod, Riverwood's lumber mill operator, who sits just a stone throw away from Illinalta, doesn't use it. He looks away from it, as if he knows something you don't. Nestled in the woods near the lake, players have discovered unmarked shrines, often desecrated, sometimes guarded by necromancers or bandits. One such site sits southwest of the Guardian Stone. Just 100 metres from the lake's edge, a necromancer patrols it, bones litter the altar. These shrines aren't connected to quests, they don't offer blessings, there's no lore associated with them in books or dialogue, but they all share a common trait. They're close to the water, which suggests something chilling. Lake Ilinalta doesn't just draw people in, it draws power. And maybe what it gives back isn't whole. In the quest The Black Star, we learn that Malin, once a respected mage, retreated to Ilinalta's Deep to perform his soul experiments. The College of Winterhold never speaks of him. Not even Nalakar, who sends you to investigate, says much about Malin's past. His name has even been stripped from history. But why did he choose Ilinalta? Why not a Dwemer ruin, a barrow, or even a hidden cave? The answer may be practical, proximity, isolation, but the answer may also be ritualistic. The waters of Ilinalta are still, deep, and ancient. And if you were going to bind souls, you'd want the world to forget where you did it, and water covers all sins, and Ilinalta never gives them back. Beneath the lake's surface are chests, weapons, and ruins, placed without any direct narrative reason. You can dive into the shallows and find helmets, coins, and bones. No enemies spawn there except for a few fishes, no quests lead you underwater, and no one talks about what's down there. That's what makes it chilling. Because Skyrim's design is rarely this empty on accident. If something is underwater, it was placed. And if it was placed, it means someone, somewhere, thought it belonged at the bottom. Exactly like the treasure map that leads you to the bottom of the lake where you find a chest. The lake didn't just drown bodies, it hid memories as well. Lake Ilinalta also plays a role in mods and cut content tied to Oblivion Gates and Daedric incursions. Players have speculated that it was once meant to be a gateway site, a place where Daedric magic pulled after the Oblivion Crisis. Though the game never confirms this, the repetition of necromantic activity, the sunken shrines, and the haunted silence all point to a history that's been intentionally removed. Skyrim doesn't rewrite history, it just drowns it. There are no bard songs about Lake Ilinalta, no tales in taverns, no epic poems of the sunken ship or heroic saves. Other places in Skyrim, like Riften's Canals or Solitude's Sea, have stories. Ilinalta has nothing, just a blank spot on the map. And maybe that's what makes it more terrifying than any haunted ruin. Because it's not forgotten, it's just ignored. And the people of Skyrim have learned not to speak of what sinks there. Skyrim is a land of stone and blood, of ruin and fire, but Lake Ilinalta is different. It doesn't shout, it doesn't whisper, it waits. It lets you forget what you saw. It lets you think it was a pretty view. It lets you move on. But it never really does. Because the things buried here, they weren't really meant to be found. And they weren't meant to stay dead either. They were meant to sink, to stay silent. Just like the lake that holds them, making this the most mysterious lake in all of Skyrim. Everyone in Skyrim knows about the many ancient ruins that can be found on the map. They sit atop mountains half buried in snow. They cling to cliff edges, hiding behind waterfalls. They wait in silence long after people who built them are dust. Some of these ruins are tied to quests. Some offer rewards. Some reveal clear history. But then there are others. Places that exist without some kind of clear explanation. That kind of whisper rather than speak. That reward your curiosity not with treasures, but with questions. These are the places that leave you unsettled. That feel like they shouldn't have been uncovered, or like they're still waiting for something. And some are more mysterious than others. From the outside, Kagranzel seems like a small Dwemer ruin in a big building. But inside it becomes something else entirely. At first, it's quiet. A single room. In the centre, a glowing orb floats above a pedestal. You're told absolutely nothing. There are no enemies, no journals, just the sound of gears and the hum of Dwemer magic. However, surrounding the orb are 3 dead bandits who have clearly had a tough time with it. But if you activate the orb, it pulses. Then the lights go dark and the floor vanishes beneath you. Suddenly you're falling hundreds of feet into a massive hidden cavern deep below the mountains. An underground lake stretches out before you, and on the far banks, Falmer wait. It's a trap. But why? The Elder Scrolls Online may offer a clue. In this, Kagranzal appears again, and the lore there suggests it was a Dwemer observatory constructed to detect incoming threats through visual and sonic projection. The glowing orb? A possible remnant of that mechanism. A magical bait system designed to lure intruders and send them plummeting into a kill zone. The Falmer didn't build this, but they found it. And now they live there, infesting the caverns like roaches in a collapsed vault. The Dwemer are long gone, but their trap still works. Yungol Barrow isn't a quest destination, unless you're specifically sent for Yungol's helmet. But once you enter, the game does change. Almost immediately, you're followed by blue glowing orbs. They flicker behind pillars, drift beside your character, follow you without explanation. They never attack, they never speak, they're just there. Some players can even miss them entirely. Others say they only appear under specific conditions. The game doesn't really log them, no enemies are tied to them, and even when you reach the end, facing Yungol's skeletal remains, they simply vanish. So what are they? The best clue lies in a book, Yungol and the Sea Ghosts. It describes the son of Yungol perishing on a sea voyage, dragged to the ocean floor by spectral forces. The glowing lights may be the spirit of his crew, or some form of ancient Nord death guardians. Yungol's tomb is protected by something. We just don't know what. However, no priest stands to watch, no dragger hold the gate, only these lights. Even though some say they're sea ghosts, some also say they're memories, and that makes them one of Skyrim's most elegant mysteries. Most dungeons in Skyrim have a door, but the Sightless Pit has a drop, and a massive one for that matter. Once you enter, you fall. There's no way back. You spiral down through dark Falmer tunnels, winding into the earth in a helix of rot and ice. But the name is fitting for what it's worth. It does feel designed to disorient and trap. The architecture becomes more twisted the deeper you go. Stone becomes fungus. Hallways turn into ribcage-like corridors. The final chamber is the Temple of Scrib, a cathedral of green mist and curved monuments that look almost biological. Falmer patrol here like priests, not guards. But there's no named boss, no central artifact, just tension and questions. Now the word Scrib is never explained in-game, nor does it appear elsewhere in the lore. However, some players believe this was once a Falmer place of worship, devoted to the twisted legacy of their underground life. Others suggest the Dwemer built it as a cruel form of containment, a spiritual prison for the enslaved snow elves. There's not many journals, no voice lines at all, just the implication that the Falmer still remember what they lost. And at the bottom of that pit, in the temple no one speaks of, they might still believe in something. That's what makes the Sightless Pit so disturbing. It doesn't trap you with the enemies, it traps you with belief. The Labyrinthian ruin is huge, a sprawling complex of tombs, towers and arcane chambers, hidden in the snowy fields near Morthal. It was once known as Bromjunar, a first-era city that served as an early Nord school of magic, a precursor to the College of Winterhold. In its prime, this was a place of learning, ritual and magical theory. But something went wrong. Very wrong. During the quest, the Staff of Magnus, you're sent here to recover a legendary artifact. Along the way, you encounter ghosts, echoes of students and teachers who came here before. You hear them joke, then fear, then argue, and then die. They came to retrieve the Staff of Magnus as well, but found something far worse. Morokai, a dragon priest of terrifying power, sealed in a magical barrier powered by the students themselves. They chose imprisonment over destruction. and for centuries they succeed. There's little written record about Mordecai's past. No grand legend, no inscription, only the prison. That's what makes it so strange. They didn't just fight, they built a containment system strong enough to hold a being that predates written history. But why? Why this ruin? Why this staff? And why a city of mages whose name no one remembers? Labyrinthian doesn't really tell you, but the silence says enough. Some magic wasn't meant to be studied, and some ruins weren't meant to be reopened. Avincenzel is the kind of ruin that doesn't speak through enemies or books. It speaks through ghosts. As soon as you enter, you see the first one, a ghostly Argonian, walking with her old expedition crew. They speak, joke, plan. They're echoes of a doomed mission, visions of the past played out in real time. As you follow them through the ruin, their mood kind of shifts. Excitement turns into fear, trust fractures, and by the time you reach the final chamber, their voices are gone. The story connects to a quest involving the Dwemer lexicon, which from deepest fathoms begs you to return. She speaks in riddles, clearly touched by something the lexicon showed her. This artifact, possibly tied to Hermarchus Mora, seems to hold forbidden knowledge. And the further the expedition carried it, the worse things became. There's no boss, no villain, no treasure beyond the lexicon. But the walls themselves hum with an unseen presence. Was the lexicon cursed? Or did the Dwemer build Avincenzel to house something else? Something no one should ever carry? These places aren't just dungeons. They're questions. Unfinished thoughts left by developers who seem to know exactly how much to show. And exactly how much to keep hidden. They give you whispers, ghosts, orbs, rooms that feel older than the 9 divines, lore that spans into the Elder Scrolls Online, because not every mystery needs solving. Sometimes it's more powerful when it's just there. Some places in Skyrim are loud. Their stories spill out the moment you step across the threshold. Bandits yell, necromancers chant, dragons scream from mountaintops and leave scorch trails behind them. And then there are quieter places. Places that aren't hidden but still feel unseen. Places where things don't quite add up. Where the land remembers something that the people may have forgotten. Where history hums under your feet but no one speaks about it. Roekstead is one of those places. You'll find it to the west of Whiterun, past the river and the ridges, nestled in the Golden Plains. It has an inn, a few farms, and some familiar names. There are even a couple of quests, if you happen to meet the right people. It looks just like another dot on the map, but stay a little longer, listen a little closer, because the longer you stand in Roekstead, the stranger it starts to feel. And the more you'll wonder what's really going on here. Roekstead appears ordinary at first glance. A cluster of homes, a small inn, a few NPCs tending to crops and livestock. It's the kind of place you might ride past on your way to Markarth, barely noticing it exists at all. And Skyrim doesn't mind if you ignore it. The game offers no formal reason to stop here, only for a quest. No guild sends you here, the town is content to remain on the fringe, both geographically and narratively. But that absence, the narrative silence, is exactly why people have been talking about Roekstead for years. Because despite its unassuming nature, the deeper you dig, the stranger it becomes. The town takes its name from Roek, a former Imperial soldier who says he purchased the land and turned it from barren waste into fertile fields. According to the UESP, Roek fought in the Great War, was injured and healed by his friend. After the war, the two of them settled here. Simple enough, right? Except Roekstead is ancient. It's mentioned in the bard's song Ragnar the Red, a traditional ballad that predates the events of Skyrim by generations. Even more strangely, the town is referenced in 2 much older texts as well, with one of them being the Atlas of Dragons. The former refers to Roic steading in the first era thousands of years ago, and yet Roic is alive, healthy, and just here. The optimistic view is that this is a coincidence, that Roic is a recycled name, which it could be. But this is Skyrim, where names rarely repeat without reason, and timelines usually hold together with mythic precision. That dissonance between Roic the man and Roicstead, the ancient location, is unsettling. Roicstead isn't just old, it's miraculously productive. Dialogue from various NPCs confirm that the land around Roicstead used to be barren. The holdings of Jarl Gealund describe it as nothing impressive. Yet somehow, it's the most fertile farmland in all of the Whiterun hold. One NPC even jokes that Roicstead could start exporting its soil. Farming is also rarely mentioned outside of Roicstead, and nowhere else in the game boasts this kind of prosperity. How did a town with no known blessings, no special location, no divine favour, and no apparent irrigation suddenly bloom into the headbasket of the region? Magic, maybe? Alchemy? Or perhaps a pact? When you step into the homes of Roicstead's residents, you'll find some strange things. Soul gems are placed on shelves and tables, which are odd trinkets for simple farmers, right? In Roic's Manor, a copy of the book Spirit of the Daedra sits unguarded. There are no obvious mages living in the town, no alchemists and no temples. So why the magic paraphernalia? There's also an odd conversation with Roic's daughter, in some playthroughs depending on schedules. She speaks to a man who speaks quietly of magic. He warns the girl not to tell the others. It's a moment that can easily be missed, but when paired with the Daedric book, the soul gems, and the uncanny prosperity of the town, it begins to look a lot less like coincidence and more like remnants of something kept hidden. If you've ever played Skyrim even once, you remember Lockyer. He's the thief from Roicstead, introduced in the game's opening cart ride. However, Lockyer dies before the prologue ends. But here's the strange part. No one in Roicstead remembers him, even though he hails from there. No NPCs mention him, there's no house that once belonged to him, not even a passing reference. Even more tantalizing, a cutscene from Bethesda's Creation Kit demo once showed the developers editing a location called Lockyer's Tomb. It was fully modelled, fully fleshed out, but never used. Whether it was scrapped, unfinished, or meant for later DLC, the message is clear. There was meant to be more to this story. There's a theory first floated on Reddit and later picked up by YouTubers like Fizzy, that Roicstead is a Daedric cult in disguise. The theory does fit too well. The soul gems, the Daedra text, the suspiciously fertile land, the secrecy of magic training, the disappearance of Lockyer, the oddly elderly residents who never age. What if the town made a deal with the Daedric Prince of Pestilence and Order, or Mephala, who thrives on secrets and manipulation? The people of Roicstead may have battered their souls, or their memories, and if that's true, it would explain why no one remembers Lockyer, why the town folk live in ignorance, and a deal was made, and the silence was part of the price. Roicstead doesn't shout. It doesn't demand your attention like Solitude's courtyards or Windhelm's gates. It speaks in whispers, through the rustle of the wheat fields, the creak of wooden carts, and the low murmur of farmers tending their land. The inn is calm, the streets are empty, even the people speak as if they're trying not to wake something ancient beneath the soil. There are quests here, if you know where to look. A young man dreams of becoming a hero. A few deliveries pass through the village, but none of it breaks the spell. The tone stays the same, measured, restraint, almost reverent, as though the entire town is holding its breath. What makes Roicstead feel mysterious isn't what happens here, it's what doesn't as well. No one talks about the Dragon Mound just beyond the ridge, no one mentions Haygraven Shrine nearby. No one seems disturbed by the soul gems in their neighbours' homes. They just till the land, eat their meals, and sleep in peace. And that silence, the choice to carry on without question, is louder than any shout from a dragon. Roekstead is not empty. It's quiet. And in Skyrim, quiet can mean danger, or a secret waiting to be kept. There's a certain kind of place in Skyrim, a place that was built, populated, maybe even scripted, and then seemingly forgotten. Cut content, internal decisions, lore shifts. Whatever the cause, the result is the same. A place that feels almost finished, but not quite. Roekstead is that place. And that's why people are still talking about it over a decade later. Roekstead is easy to miss. It doesn't call attention to itself. It doesn't throw a dragon in your path. It doesn't offer glory or gold, but it lingers. It sits in the back of your mind like an itch. A question without an answer. A town that should mean nothing and yet means everything. In a game that explains so much, Roekstead stands apart. It keeps its secrets. It buries its truth in old books, strange artifacts, and quiet homes filled with unnatural life. Because sometimes the most mysterious places in Skyrim aren't the ones full of monsters. They're the ones that just sit there, smiling, pretending that they're normal, when everything around them says otherwise. Across the wind-swept plains of the Whiterun Hold, where the tundra stretches endlessly beneath a pale sky, there grows something that should not exist. A tree. But not just any tree. Its bark shimmers faintly with violet light. Its roots twist through stone and ash, and its sap, known as the sleeping tree sap, induces dreams so vivid they blur the line between reality and illusion. The sleeping tree, found at Sleeping Tree Camp, is one of the most mysterious landmarks in Skyrim. No lore explains it fully. No scholar agrees on where it came from. Some say it was a piece of the mythical Tower of Nirn, torn loose during the creation of the world. Others whisper it fell from the stars, a fragment of Hermaeus Mora's realm. Or perhaps the remnant of a giant's dream that took root in the waking world. It is both beautiful and unsettling, alive yet alien, and that is what makes it Skyrim's most mysterious place. The Sleeping Tree Camp lies west of Whiterun, nestled between the plains and the mountains. The camp itself is simple, a few giant tents, a cooking fire, and at its heart, the glowing tree itself. The giants who inhabit the camp seem to worship or protect it. Unlike their kin, it's as if even they understand that this tree is sacred or dangerous. The landscape around the tree seems changed by its presence. The ground is oddly coloured, the grass is sparse, and the air is faintly hazy, as though the world itself is holding its breath. There is no sound of wind here, no bird song, only the faint hum of something ancient, something that doesn't quite belong. The most bizarre and defining feature of the sleeping tree is its sap, a rare substance that can be collected in vials. It glows faintly purple, and when consumed, it grants the drinker immense vitality and strength at a cost. The sleeping tree sap temporarily increases stamina and resistance, but also induces a stale, dreamlike fog. Users report hallucinations, strange visions, and in extreme cases, unconsciousness. Some suggest that the tree feeds on these dreams, that it drinks the consciousness of those who taste its essence. In Skyrim's world, where potions and alchemy are commonplace, the sap stands apart. It doesn't behave like a natural mixture, it feels alive. There are even merchants in Whiterun who seek to trade in the sap, implying that this bizarre substance has become part of Skyrim's underground economy. Half medicine, half narcotic. Its effects blur the line between reality and dream, and the source of that power only deepens the mystery of the tree itself. Scholars and travellers have long debated where the sleeping tree came from. Each theory is stranger than the last. Some claim that the sleeping tree was born of a meteor, a seed carried through the void that crashed into Skyrim long ago. Its otherworldly glow and unnatural resilience seem to support this theory. If true, it would mean the tree is not of Nirn at all, but a relic of another realm, or another world entirely. Others believe it was flung into the air during the eruption of Red Mountain, carried by divine or Daedric forces before landing in Whiterun's tundra. The reddish hue of its roots, reminiscent of volcanic glass, could support this origin. Perhaps the most chilling theory ties it to Hermaeus Mora herself, the Daedric Prince of Knowledge and Fate. The tree's alien appearance and dream-inducing sap mirror the strange, organic structures seen in Mora's realm. If so, the tree could be a tendril from that realm, reaching into Skyrim to observe or corrupt the minds of mortals. None of these explanations are confirmed. They might never be, and that's what makes the sleeping tree so fascinating. It resists understanding. It refuses to fit neatly into Skyrim's known mythology. Perhaps the most peculiar aspect of the sleeping tree is not the tree itself, but its guardian. The giant who lives here does not attack on sight. This is almost unheard of in Skyrim, where giants fiercely protect their mammoths and territory. But if you do get too close, just be wary that you will be sent into the sky like I did. Yet at the sleeping tree they are calm. Some travellers believe these giants are dream-bound, enslaved by the tree's sap. Their somewhat gentle behaviour could be the result of constant exposure to its hallucinogenic power, leaving them in a state of perpetual trance. Others believe they are its chosen protectors, creatures who understand the tree's cosmic importance in a way mortals cannot. Whatever the truth, the relationship between the giant and the tree only adds to the camp's eerie mystique. It is a place of peace, yes, but peace of a strange, unnatural kind. In Whiterun, you may encounter Ysolda, an ambitious trader with dreams of independence. She asks the Dragonborn to collect sleeping tree sap for her, implying that she already has connections to its distribution. Her request opens a window into an unsettling truth. The sap is not just a curiosity, it's a commodity. If she is willing to buy it, that means someone is selling it. Somewhere in Skyrim there exists a quiet trade in the sap, its users chasing the vivid dreams it induces. In a land of hardship, perhaps they see those dreams as an escape. This commercialization of something so alien, so potentially dangerous, is deeply Skyrim in spirit. It reflects the world's indifference to mystery, how wonder and horror alike are reduced to trade goods and coin. The sleeping tree then is not just bizarre in its existence, it's bizarre in how casually the world accepts it. The very name sleeping tree implies a state between wakefulness and unconsciousness, a threshold. Some mages speculate that the tree acts as a conduit between Nirn and the dreams of Aetherius. Perhaps those who drink its sap enter not mere hallucinations, but glimpses of another plane of existence. There are whispers of travellers who fell asleep beneath its roots and never woke up again. Others awoke days later, speaking of vast forests of light, endless skies, and the voice of a great tree, whispering in a language no mortal tongue could speak. If true, this makes the sleeping tree not just a plant, but a living portal, one that connects Skyrim's physical world with its spiritual or cosmic dimensions. And if it is dreaming, then perhaps in some strange way, all of Skyrim dreams with it as well. It's ironic that Skyrim's most bizarre phenomenon lies so close to its most familiar city. Whiterun, the heart of trade and politics, stands as a symbol of normalness in Skyrim. Its walls are safe, its people proud, its leadership stable compared to the chaos elsewhere. Yet just beyond these walls, in the plains where mammoths wander, grows a tree that defies all natural law. It's as though the two coexist in deliberate contrast. Whiterun represents the mortal world, stable, rational, and civilized, while the sleeping tree embodies the cosmic and unknowable. Every day, merchants, soldiers, and travellers pass within sight of its faint purple glow, never questioning its presence. It is the bizarre hiding in plain sight. The sleeping tree is one of Skyrim's greatest enigmas, a living contradiction that blurs the line between plant, god, and dream. It stands in quiet defiance of explanation, its roots sunk deep into the bones of the world, its branches reaching towards something beyond mortal comprehension. In a land defined by war and prophecy, it reminds us that not all mysteries can be solved, and not all beauty is meant to be understood. Maybe the tree really does dream, and maybe when we stand beneath it, we dream with it. Whatever its truth, the sleeping tree remains Skyrim's most mysterious and bizarre place, an alien heart beating quietly beneath the open sky, whispering to anyone who dares listen that the world of men is smaller, stranger, and far more magical than they will ever know. In the far northern reaches of Skyrim, nestled between frost-bitten cliffs and blizzards that never rest, lies a place few known, and even fewer survive. The Chill. To most, it's not even a location. They've never heard of it, never seen it on the map, and certainly never dared to stumble into it by chance. It doesn't announce itself, nor does it offer the illusion of justice and fairness. Instead, it whispers a warning in the howling wind. This is where Winterhold sends those they wish forgotten, and within its glacial prison walls lies the skeletal remains of prisoners long dead. Silent, frozen figures who raise more questions than answers. The Chill is unlike any other prison in Skyrim. It is the only hold facility not managed by jailers or city guards, but by conjured frost atronics. Elemental beings of ice who offer no sympathy, no nourishment, and no reprieve. And in the farthest corners of this glacial cave, you find them. Locked cages, bedrolls iced over with time, and the bones of those who never left. But who are they? Why are they left to die? And what does this unassuming location tell us about Winterhold, the college, and the darker undercurrents of Skyrim's justice system? The Chill is not labelled on any map and cannot be found through exploration alone. In fact, the only way most players discover it is through an arrest in the hold of Winterhold, one of the least populated and most isolated regions in Skyrim. When you choose imprisonment over a fine in this hold, instead of waking up in a city cell, you awaken in a cave. The walls are slick with frost, the air is heavy with silence, the cells are small, metallic cages with adept-level locks. 3 of them line the cave's walls. Each cage contains a bedroll, some bones, and all emit a cheering aura of neglect. But unlike other jails in Skyrim, there is no exit mechanism, no waiting guard to release you after time has passed. This is a place where you are meant to escape or die in. But what truly sets the Chill apart is what you find when you look closely at the details. 2 of the cages contain human remains. There are no journals, no named markers, no dialogue triggers to identify them. The game offers no quest or backstory. It gives you only the image of these bones, curled up on bedrolls sealed behind iron bars. The implication is bleak. These were real prisoners, once alive, who died from exposure, starvation, or perhaps even at the hands of the frost trolls themselves. One cannot help but wonder, why are they so forgotten? Were they simply low-level criminals the Jarl wished to dispose of? Were they mages cast out of the College of Winterhold for breaking rules that went too far? Or were they political prisoners? People whose continued existence threatened the fragile order of a crumbling hold? There is one possibility that adds a particularly tragic angle. The college has a dark history. Members involved in necromancy, Daedric worship, and magical incidents have vanished with little explanation. These skeletal remains may be proof of those stories, evidence that the college doesn't exile its most dangerous members to the wilds, but locks them away in the Chill, where their mistakes can be quietly erased. While every other hold in Skyrim uses guards and jailers to maintain order, Winterhold relies on the frost trolls, summoned ice elementals. This is more than a mere aesthetic choice. It's emblematic of how Winterhold views its prisoners, not as citizens who've broken the law, but as expendables. People unworthy of even basic human dignity. These Frost Atronachs don't feed, speak, or care. They won't hesitate to kill a prisoner attempting to escape. And their cold, mindless efficiency makes them the perfect tools for silent execution. If a prisoner were to die of starvation or illness, no guard would know. No reports would be filed, no one would ever visit the Chill to retrieve their body. This system absolves any human of moral responsibility. It allows the authorities of Winterhold, whether the Jarl or the College, to maintain plausible deniability. The Chill operates like a machine, and the Frost Atronachs are its gears. Players have speculated wildly over the years about who the skeletons in the Chill may have been. Some theorists suggest that they could be remnants of the Great Collapse, the mysterious cataclysm that destroyed much of Winterhold and left the city in ruins. Perhaps in the chaos, the Jarl's court turned to the cruel punishments to maintain control. Others think the bones could belong to mages who dabbled in Daedric rituals or Black Soul gem magic, criminal acts even in the arcane lenient halls of the College. Reddit and the Elder Scrolls forums have pointed to possible connections with the Psijic Order or the remnants of the Mythic Dawn, hiding in plain sight and eliminated when discovered. Still, others believe the prisoners may not be criminals at all, but scapegoats. People who knew too much about the College's experiments, or who bore witness to things the Jarl's court wanted buried. There's also the uncanny silence about the Chill in-game. No NPC mentions it, not even the guards or mages. You only hear about it when you're going to jail. It's almost as if everyone in Winterhold is pretending it doesn't exist. This kind of narrative omission is pretty rare in Skyrim, and often a signal that something darker lurks beneath the surface. The use of magic for containment and execution is a theme deeply ingrained in Skyrim's lore, but in the Chill, that theme is taken to its coldest extreme. Unlike the Dwemer ruins, this isn't a mystical place meant to awe, it's meant to erase. Prisoners here aren't just locked away, they're deleted. No one comes looking for them and no one knows their names. It's a brutal metaphor for the unchecked power of Winterhold's institution. The Jarl, weakened and powerless, in a hold lost to time, may be clinging to order by any means. The College, unregulated and secretive, could be using the Chill as a dumping ground for their mistakes. And that makes the skeletons more than just a set dressing. They are narrative relics, fossils of a system that no longer sees justice as rehabilitation, but as erasure. Skyrim is full of mysteries, but few are as quietly chilling as the Chill. The prison offers no quests, no dialogue, no direct lore, but it tells a story all the same. Through its design, its silence, and the forgotten bones of the prisoners, it paints a picture of a hold struggling to maintain power, a college guarding its secrets, and a justice system that would rather you freeze in silence than be heard in defiance. The skeletons remain not just as relics of failed escapes or neglected prisoners, but as symbols of a broader truth in Skyrim. Sometimes the coldest places aren't just made of ice, they're made of indifference. And in the end, maybe that's the scariest mystery of all. Because even in Skyrim, it's very rare to see something as neglected as this. Some places in Skyrim demand your attention. You see them glowing on the compass, quest markers drag you towards them, dialogue pushes you into their history. And then there are others, the ones that just kind of exist. You pass by them without knowing, maybe a dozen times, or maybe more. They're tucked between riverbanks, cliffs, or collapsed roads, places so natural you think they're just empty. And then one day, you take the wrong path along the White River, southeast of Windhelm, and you hear it, a waterfall. You step behind the edge of it, expecting a cave or maybe just a dead-end pool. But instead, you find a door which leads to the abandoned prison. And after 13 years, I still think about what I found inside. The abandoned prison has no quests tied to it. No event sends you here, no bounty board, and no courier note. In fact, until the Anniversary Edition added a brief fishing creation and alternative start functionality, there was literally nothing pulling the player here. But it's fully modelled, fully voiced, and fully abandoned. Somewhat. Cells, skeletons, a crumbling hallway system, a mess hall, quad quarters, all the things you'd expect from an official prison facility. But no name, no official history, and no memory. It feels like it was just turned off. As if the Empire simply forgot about it, or chose to. As soon as you enter, you noticed what caused the ruin. Water. Torrents of it, pouring through cracked ceilings and corroded stone. The White River flows into the prison, breaking the walls, pooling at your feet, and cutting off some corridors entirely. This was not an attack. It was time. And the prison didn't die in flames, it drowned. Furniture floats, cell doors hang from broken hinges. There are signs of a hasty evacuation, but not a complete one. Because bodies still remain, and they're not all in their cells. Most dungeons in Skyrim follow a clear path. You find enemies, you fight through it, and then you loot. The abandoned prison follows something more subtle, and much more disturbing. The guards are still here, skeletons in full Imperial armour, sprawled near collapsed beams, one even hanging off a stairway, with its sword still drawn. Some tried to escape, but some didn't make it. There are signs of conflict but not war, and just desperation. Something happened here, something fast, maybe a collapse, maybe the flood, and the Empire. They didn't clean it up, they left it. Or perhaps they were never allowed back in. In the lower section of the prison, if you look carefully, you'll find two documents. A guard's note describing rising water levels and damaged infrastructure, and a prisoner's journal smuggled out through a crack in the wall, detailing the last days of incarceration. The guard is worried, but focused, and the prisoner is terrified. They describe guards abandoning posts, confusion in the halls, water seeping into the bunks, and then silence. There's no record of an evacuation order, no mention of outside reinforcements, just fear and then stillness. As if the prison sealed itself off, and as if the world moved on without it. Unlike places like the Chill, the abandoned prison doesn't have a defined cultural or political role. Not Dunmer, not Daedric, and not Stormcloak. There's no shrine, no racial banners, no inscriptions. Which raises a question. Who really built this? Some speculate it was a pre-Empire military site, a temporary holding facility. Others think it was Nordic, later co-opted by Imperial forces. The most compelling theory, however, is it was a secret Imperial site, never intended for the public, and used for prisoners the Empire didn't want associated with major cities, political dissidents, war deserters, witch hunts, and once it became unstable, it was sealed and forgotten by design. The level design here is simple, but haunting. You start at the top, collapsed halls, collapsed roof, half-buried furniture. You move down into cells, low chambers, bunk beds, and broken kitchens. And then you end up in the lowest area, where water runs the deepest, facing a room that looks like it was never meant to be escaped from. Iron doors, no windows, no light. And you realise this wasn't just a holding facility, was it? It was a final stop. Some of these prisoners were never meant to be transferred. They were meant to disappear. The abandoned prison sits at a strange fork in the White River, between Mixwater Mill and Valheim Towers. You can walk past the waterfall a dozen times and never notice the door tucked behind the mist. There's no obvious path, no combat outside, and no glowing loot. Just rock, water, and the faint splash of stone. And if you never poke behind the falls, you never find it, which makes it feel more like a secret than a dungeon, and more like a memory than a location. You expect the abandoned prison to be somewhat empty, a ruin, a forgotten pile of flooded stone and rusted bars. And for a moment, it is. But then the air kind of changes as you move deeper into the dungeon. A chill creeps in, deeper than the cold of the White River's spray. And as you step deeper into the lower levels, where water laps at your ankles and the torchlight flickers against the mildew-slick walls, you see them. The ghosts of the abandoned prison. Flickering, semi-transparent forms. Their faces long gone, their bodies faded into grey mist. But their rage is very real. These aren't spirits drifting in mourning. They attack, silently, swiftly, with old iron weapons that should have rusted into the dust long ago. They moan in bursts of grief or fury, and when they vanish, they don't fall, they disperse, as if they've finally realised it's too late, that they're no longer alive. This kind of place is a place where lore enthusiasts love to break down. It's a ruin with no direct quest, documents you can miss, skeletons telling half the story, and environmental design that reveals secreted silence. The kind of location where every object matters. A knocked over chair, a cell that was locked but broken open, a table set with untouched food. It's more than storytelling, it's ghostwriting, and Bethesda left the pen right where you can find it, if you're paying attention. 13 years later, after my first playthrough of Skyrim, I still think about that waterfall, how quiet it was, how strange the prison felt inside, complete, deliberate, and utterly unspoken for. You can walk away from it, loot it, use it as a home base, or never return. But something about that space sticks with you. A jail where no one survived, a facility no one remembers. And a story that was buried not by war, but by water, time, and the game's refusal to explain itself. Some places in Skyrim want you to be a hero, but this one kind of just wants you to listen. What makes a place truly mysterious in Skyrim isn't just hidden lore or unanswered questions. It's the feeling that even after you've explored everything, something still doesn't fully make sense. These locations leave gaps on purpose. You find fragments of stories, strange details, ancient powers, and pieces of history that never completely connect together, no matter how close you look. And instead of giving clear answers, Skyrim often leaves players with implications, letting the atmosphere and the unknown do most of the work. That's why these places stay memorable for so long. Because mystery creates curiosity in a way straightforward storytelling can't. The less certain you are about what really happened somewhere, the more your mind keeps returning to it afterward. And Skyrim understands that perfectly. Some of the game's most fascinating locations aren't the ones with the biggest battles or the best rewards. They're the places that leave you unsettled, confused, and still searching for answers long after you've already left them behind.